All right. Hello, this is the SIG Cluster Lifecycle meeting. Today is the 9th of March, 2021. I'm going to give the agenda document link in chat. Please add your names to the list of participants and your agenda topics. Here is the link. All right. Do we have any new meeting participants that wish to present themselves to the group?
Hey, I'm Micah. I'm from AWS. Just saying hi. I haven't been here before. Been around Kubernetes a while and getting spun up on Cappy and wanted to say hi and start dropping in.
Thanks for joining, Mika. All right. I guess we should move to the group topics. So this is about C group drivers. It's a saga already. The saga continues. I had a bit of a chat with SIG node about this. So the situation currently is that the kubelet cannot detect the container runtime C group driver, and they have to match because they're essentially the kubelet is managing slices, C groups, and basically if they don't match, you get a bit of a mess. And it's manual. You have to set up the kubelet manually. You have to know what is the driver on the host container runtime. And you have to pass either a flag, which is deprecated, or a kubelet configuration value that matches the host C group driver. And I had a discussion with Signode. They know that this is very annoying, but it has been like that for a very long time, probably since the inception of the kubelet. So the latest discussion with them, and also in the same discussion participated some CRI implementers from Cryo and Containerd, I think, is to start using the CRI basically interface, the protocols to communicate this implementation detail. I'm not sure when this is going to happen, but I'm sure you know that deployers such as kubeadm, it has become a cluster API problem. I probably COPS knows about it, Minikube knows about it, everybody pretty much. It's like a major pain for users to be even discovering this C group driver detail. It's like a whole system level detail that people should not know about. And it has been degrading the UX of deployers for years, pretty much. So yeah, I've logged this issue. I'm not sure when somebody is going to start working on it, but at least we have some initial proposal in there. Let me show it quickly. Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of alternatives. Either the kubelet should look what the CRI implementer is doing, or the other way around, which is the kubelet is set up in a certain way, and basically the container runtime adapts to the particular driver. From what I understood, the second option is preferred. We had this is the link to the Slack discussion. So if you are interested in this, you can follow the ticket. I think this is all we can do for now. There will not be any changes related to this auto detection in 121 for sure. Yeah, maybe I should give a little bit of an update about the related problem that we had with the kubelet. Actually, it's not related. It's a different issue. Let me try to find it. Basically, the Minikube folks discovered that the kubelet is now starting with a delay of 1 minute, which is only yes, it's not only a problem in master, it's also a problem in all the release branches because a particular change was backported without being tested. I wanted to give a bit of an update about that. I'm going to, basically the PR is, from my perspective, is in a good state. It past review from Jordan, from Derek, and from Elena Hashman from Red Hat. Basically, I think Derek has to do another pass on this because we had a back and forth discussion. What is best? What could go wrong? I did some testing here. The delay is caused by a particular check we do. We added a particular check to synchronize the informer the kubelet defines to enumerate the nodes from the API server. So that the kubelet synchronizes with the API server to know what nodes are in the cluster. And a particular delay was introduced that is very problematic. It's not in a good spot. So this PR tries to fix this. But yeah, this is, I'm going to push for this. There's a milestone on the ticket, on the PR, and it's marked as critical urgent. Hopefully we can block the further releases. The release process of prior, the patch releases of prior minor releases is a bit arbitrary at the moment. I need to talk with the release team to potentially block all those patch releases as well. Because currently I don't think anybody looks at critical tickets in Kubernetes, and they just push a new release, whatever accumulates for that particular release. But ideally we should block if something is critical, backport it, and only then release some of these patch releases. This can help downstream consumers knowing that, okay, we know about this critical fix, but I mean, hopefully the next patch release fixes it. But if we release a patch release without this critical bug fixed, it's a bit confusing. So yeah, this is the update for that. I forgot to add it in the agenda. Does anybody else have any? Before that, does anybody have any group topics? Because I want to go to the annual report. Maybe we can have a review here.
I have a question that's unrelated to the agenda, but I can wait for till after sub-project updates if we want to go through this first.
All right. So, okay. So you want to ask in the sub-project updates? Cool. So every SIG has to do an annual report now. Working groups have to do them as well. So I prepared this in a Google Doc. I don't think anyone commented on that, but this is the PR. I don't know what is the deadline for this to merge, but I think it's something like the middle of March potentially. Justin, I want to ask you: do you think it's a good idea to review this here, or maybe just punt to a synchronous review?
I suggest if there are any questions anyone wants to bring up, we can talk about them here. Like Fabrizio just commented that he added some comments. I don't know if any of those are things that we should discuss synchronously. Otherwise, I suggest just encouraging people to have a look. But yeah, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, no problem. I see Fabrizio added comments. I actually haven't checked them yet, but overall, there's nothing that, how do I say, I don't think there's any pending discussions that much in this particular annual report. Everything is pretty transparent. We don't have any private topics.
Lubomir, I've reported a comment from the Google Doc in the PR. They are only needs, but what you are proposing, it looks more than fine for me. Thank you for driving this work.
Okay. So Fabrizio, I'm going to update your comments maybe tomorrow. If anybody else has any comments for this annual report, please add them. I know that DIMS is going to do another pass on this because DIMS is the liaison between the steering committee and the SIG. So after that, we are going to probably try to finish this around maybe next week or a couple of weeks from now. So yeah, that's for the annual report. Any group topics again? All right. Moving to updates, I added a couple of items for kubeadm. We are defaulting the kubelet configuration C group driver, which is related to the previous topic. Basically, we started defaulting to systemd for new clusters that are created. And I coordinated this with the mailing list, cluster API, and image builder. If any other of the sub-projects has any questions, like probably now is the good time to ask them. The story is that kubeadm uses systemd to run the kubelet, and you have to, if you're using systemd to run the kubelet, the recommended driver is systemd, which means that for kubeadm setups, ideally, like one should be using the systemd driver. I know that Jason brought the topic about what do we do with some other Linux distributions that are not using systemd. I know that we support, sorry, I forgot the name of that distribution.
OpenRC.
The OpenRC is their init system, but I forgot the name of it. It's a popular minimal distribution. Anyway, and somebody commented that they actually don't mind this change as long as you can configure it. So I guess we can proceed with it. I didn't get any comments from the actual OpenRC maintainers, but to my understanding, the systemd driver will be required if you want to support C Group's version 2. So I don't think anybody is going to be able to use C Group FS at that point. So yeah, I don't know what's the situation there. I didn't see any major complaints about this. And again, until we have this automatic detection, we're basically going to execute on this change. During the upgrade, it's not going to happen for 121, but we have a plan to also start requiring users to, in 122, to basically set up their nodes to be compatible with this driver, because kubeadm will automatically start upgrading them to systemd unless they are explicit about the C group driver that they want. In the linked issue, I have a PR for the community's website where I wrote a new guide how to migrate to a new driver. And that's part of the effort we have for that. Does anybody have any questions for this? Okay, so the other item for kubeadm is that we are graduating the support for dual stack and IPv6 to beta in 121. This is in parallel to the upstream Kubernetes feature gate graduation, which is also happening in 121. We already have tests. Somebody submitted a PR to document how people can do this with kubeadm. And this is basically, we're just flipping the feature gate at this point. I don't know what else is required. I think one of the flags for the Kube API server is not compatible with dual stack, but they have some discussion there that I haven't followed. Yeah, you can learn more about this in the related issue that I added here. Okay, Eric, questions for kubeadm? Cool. Moving to COPS, Justin.
Thank you. Yes. So I think the most interesting cross-project thing is we are adding support for control plane nodes that don't run etcd. So you know, we have this notion of a group of nodes similar to a machine deployment in Cluster API, and we currently have two main classes of those. We have still called master, and we have nodes, and we are going to add a third one called, I think it's going to be called API server, that will not run etcd and could have a much more simple auto scaling policy on it, for example. So you would still run 3 etcd control plane nodes, and then you would run n, like where n is from 0 to whatever your max is, of API server. So it's a sort of scalability thing. The interesting things I think are we're trying to figure out how to label and taint those. Like, should we label them as control plane? Should we taint them as control plane? Should we try to be more granular? So I think we're probably going to end up labeling them with control plane and a second label to say they are control plane and API server, but that is sort of ongoing.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea to use a separate label instead of being descriptive in a single label.
Yes, I think the two alternatives are control plane and API server, or just API server, or something like that. The downside of just API server is, although it's more accurate, it would mean that you'd have to sort of know, like you'd have to learn that, right? You'd have to know like control plane can be labeled either control plane or API server. And it might be we do something different for taints than we do for labels.
I see. So by saying a node, is this, are the Kube API servers managed by a kubelet?
The Kube API servers in, so the control plane nodes do run a kubelet. And yes, Kube API server runs as a static pod on the control plane nodes in KOps.
And it's only the server without scheduler and a control manager.
We aren't sure about that, actually, to be honest. Like it's a little fuzzy. That's one of the things we're debating is like, when we say this, do we really mean not etcd, or do we mean just API server?
Yeah, if all the control plane components are there, at least in kubeADM, we call this an external etcd control plane node, something in those lines. But we don't label it. It's just you can use the kubeADM config to discover this information. But it really, I think you should make this decision before. You should make this decision before thinking about the names, the labels.
Does kubeADM label external etcd with the control plane label?
Yes. So in an external etcd setup, we deploy the control plane components. We skip etcd, and we just configure the Kube API server to point to an external etcd endpoint. But the label is exactly the same. So yeah, I mean, you can still label them with something like control plane, and then a separate label that is external etcd, maybe.
Yeah, I agree. To me, that seems the most flexible. And I'm arguing on the review that we should just do the labels we're sure about, and because we can always add labels later, but it's very difficult to take them away.
Yeah, and it's essentially a matter of topology, whether you want to have only the Kube API server there. Like, is it a requirement to have it only the server, or do you want the other components as well? The benefit of having them all on the same node is that they can only communicate on localhost. They don't need to be communicating across the internet or across the same subnetwork to the API server. Yeah, it's a topology decision. Yeah, I'm going to follow this. If anybody else is interested, you can do the same.
Yeah, I actually have some thoughts on this just from operating EKS. I'll leave comments on the ticket.
All right. Thank you.
I have a sort of tangentially related, this is my question that I wanted to bring up that's sort of tangentially related to this. We're really interested in, like, based on how EKS supports multi-etcd separate from, EKS operates etcd separate from the Kube API server today in the managed EKS. I'm on the EKS distro, EKS Anywhere team. And we're really interested in CAPI and also in using the CAPI to create clusters. And we've been using COPS as kind of as one of our test beds. And one of the things we've noticed, and it maybe is specific to COPS, but I'm curious. I just want to ask it because Justin, you're here, and kind of the etcd came up. COPS uses the Cope.io etcd manager for managing etcd, and it's obvious why, like managing membership and other etcd operations. But that's not it's not clear to me where the governance is on that project. It's not part of the Kubernetes org. It's Apache 2 license, but I'm a part of a big corporation, so I don't have like carte blanche to commit and use anything. So I want to use an etcd manager for CAPI, but I'm curious about the status of this project, and I know there's also like etcd manager that's a Kubernetes 6 project. So I kind of wondered what was the landscape relation between those projects or direction for the Cope.io project.
Yes, absolutely. I have it's a very fair question. I have I think good news on this front. So Cope.io etcd manager is going to merge, or is in the process of merging, into the Kubernetes SIG subproject, which is etcd ADM. The code actually is currently in there in the etcd ADM project. We have not yet moved our build to it. We had a discussion we're basically up to date. So we had a discussion just last week around doing so. There's a little bit of complexity because currently we rely pretty heavily on Bazel, and we were debating what the right way was to move that forwards. But I think our next step is to get the build built from the etcd ADM repo, and then we can effectively shut down or say like contributions go into the Kubernetes SIGs repo. Because right now the path is Cope.io to and then mirrored or manually copied, but just in mirrored. And as you say, like we want to get it all going into etcd ADM. And then we can also start to unify, like etcd ADM is a command line tool, I guess more similar to kubeadm, and etcd manager is more of like, we call it the sort of self-driving version. And it would be great to get the self-driving version using the using etcd ADM. But yes, next step is to build from the etcd ADM repo, and then if we're good there, we can start to accept PRs on that repo.
Awesome. Yeah. Is there a ticket I can reference and point to say this is happening, or just that somewhat outlines what you just said? Because that would be really helpful, just to have a public place to say, look, this is happening. This is not a scary thing.
That is an excellent idea. I will open a ticket in there, and I will put it in the minutes in a couple of minutes.
Thanks. And we also have EKS internally has a very comparable version of etcd, like the Cope.io etcd manager. We call it the same thing, etcd manager internally. It's pretty, there are portions of it that are specific to how EKS operates etcd, but EKS doesn't operate etcd using a pod. We just use systemd, but we have a manager sidecar process that we operate. And that's something that I think I would like to see open sourced. I think others would too. And that might be a good, if there's a central place that folks are working on an etcd manager, that might be a good place to maybe not, instead of just having a competing thing, integrate some of the lessons we've learned and the tooling we've learned there.
That would be, that would be absolutely wonderful. Specifically to the point you just mentioned about how we run it, a well-recognized downside of the current mode of operation is we have to embed all the versions of etcd we support into the etcd manager pod, and it's not a great architecture, so we have to be sort of careful about what versions we support because it adds weight. And we discussed in etcd ADM, one of the things we want to do is to be able to run in a separate pod. And then the discussion came up, well, why are we running etcd manager in a pod at all? Why don't we run it in a systemd process? And the nice thing about that is it would be even closer to how etcd ADM runs it. So I think collaboration there would be wonderful. I will open a second ticket to describe this thing, and you can weigh in there about that.
Awesome. Yeah. There's a number of things I think that we can help contribute that I'd love to see out there. We don't run the same version of it. We actually run We don't run the upstream version recommended of etcd. We basically run latest everywhere, just because we found that the API differences are not significant enough, and the bug fixes that we want are critical enough, typically, that we just want it everywhere. So that's one difference we have, and more flexibility there. But yeah, that definitely makes sense.
But yeah, collaborating there would be wonderful. I mean, I think I'd also like to see collaboration with the Kine project, who are doing that sort of, thing as well, like supporting different etcd backends. And yeah, I think we can. I think we're finally in a reasonable place, particularly if we don't get distracted by replacing Bazel just yet.
Yeah, upstream KK already removed Bazel support, but we still have it in some repositories.
Yes, and my understanding is we don't have to remove it yet, although I've put it as sort of the writings on the wall. But if we, like, I think getting collaboration and momentum going on etcd manager is more important than removing Bazel from etcd ADM.
Yeah, I think it's fine. It's not like a recommendation to remove it. I think test infra will continue to use Bazel because there's so much Bazel in there that it's hard to remove. We at some point removed it from Cluster API because I don't think anyone liked Bazel. For me, it's personally fairly unreadable, to be honest. Yeah, but it's a build system. You can replace it later. The source code is the important part. All right. Any more questions for Cops? Cool. Moving to Minikube.
Hi. It's been a while since there was a Minikube rep here, so I thought I'd fill you guys in. So yeah, so we're kind of stuck upgrading the Kubernetes version because of the performance degradation. So we're just sort of stuck. I was gonna ask questions about your C group driver thing, but then Anders asked all the questions on the issue itself, so that's taken care of at least. Shout out to Anders. So yeah, so in the last two, so since I was last year, we released 117 and 118. We added basic support for all ARM64 machines for at least our non-VM drivers. The ISO doesn't build an ARM64 yet. We added an add-on to automatically pause your Kubernetes cluster if you're not using it. So if you don't get if Minikube or Kubernetes doesn't get any requests in a certain amount of time that's configurable, then we'll just pause Kubernetes for you. And then the second you ask something from the cluster, it'll spin back up and answer your question. And then Anders added a generic driver, so you can just have like a remote cluster somewhere that can be that you can manage via Minikube on your local machine. So those are like the big beats. And yeah, that was the thing that caught the degradation are these new performance dashboards that we added internally. And so they basically spin up a VM and then run Minikube start on all of our drivers and then measure them, and they just like spiked. And that's what happened.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm going to add a kubeadm test for that at some point. One problem we have is that currently the PRAO cluster that we have can be a bit flaky, or at least it used to be at some point getting a little bit resource constrained, which means that you cannot measure performance in a resource constrained environment. So yeah. I think I'm going to add a test for that in kubeadm itself. So hopefully we can catch some of these problems. Thank you for reporting that. It was it caught some attention. Yeah, I wanted to. So the ARM64 support, does that mean that you now support the so desired M1 Mac?
Yeah, so you can run the Docker or the Podman driver on an M1 Silicon machine.
Okay, I see. I think kind is behind this aspect. I think still
we have more. We just have more headcount. Honestly, that's the reason.
Yeah.
Poor Ben is just trying to do everything. How did you figure out how to expense the M1 at work? Right now, the engineer who's been working on our ARM machine is just bought it out of pocket, and we're just trying to figure it out. But yeah, so for the M1 machine, there are like add-ons that don't work. Like you can't get a dashboard to work, that doesn't work. And we have a bunch of add-ons that use images that don't work on ARM, but we're slowly trying to migrate everything to like a multi-arch manifest. So that's sort of, we have like a checklist of things to make it like GA.
Yeah, we just have to document to users that they should expect some images do not work yet. And
Yeah, yeah, we have all that.
I was going to ask also about the auto pause feature. Do you also support machine restarts where you have a Minikube cluster running, you restart the host completely, and the cluster is back up when you restart?
That was not really the goal of this particular add-on. If you restart your machine, Minikube, you still need to tell Minikube, hey, I had a cluster here. Like as long as your configuration is still there, the cluster will not have gone away. But we're not going to auto startup or anything like that. The way that the add-on actually works is that it's a systemd service, but it's inside of the VM. So unless you tell the VM, hey, start back up, it's not going to do anything.
I see. So you have to have a script that starts the VM as well.
And then everything will just kind of work. I mean, this is still an experimental feature. So it does like something, there are still features that are missing, namely that if you make a call to like kubeadm directly or even to Kubernetes, that not through Minikube, that won't work, but that's sort of the end goal there.
Okay, I see. Right, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Thank you. Any questions for Minikube? All right, final call for any group topics. I don't see any cluster API updates today. I saw that Fabrizio had to drop earlier today, but we do have a cluster API meeting tomorrow. So Mika, if you're interested, you can join tomorrow's meeting. All right.
Wait, is that link, the link for that meeting notes and doc in just the Cluster Lifecycle GitHub page? Oh, it's up here. Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, let me check if this is up to date. I think it is. Yeah, it's
which mailing list do I need to be to have access to that?
The SIG Cluster Lifecycle mailing.
Okay, different than this one. Okay, I'll find that one and join that.
Okay. So, do we have any final group topics for today? Anything final? All right, we can end up 20-ish minutes earlier. Thank you, everybody, and see you again in a couple of weeks. Bye.